They didn't expect the silence to be shattered like that. In a delivery room, dimly lit by fear and fluorescent light, your first cry didn't echo. It collapsed. Every device in the room paused. Monitors skipped. IV pumps froze mid-cycle. The fluorescent bulbs above flickered, then surged, as if electricity itself had pulled back in awe. That cry, chosen one, wasn't just lungs expanding. It was a signal, a breach, a rupture in the veil between sound and spirit. The nurse's hand trembled as she caught you. She'd delivered hundreds of babies, but none had done this. Her name was Marielle. She would never forget it. Her ears rang for 3 days, but it wasn't pain. It was pitch. A low, celestial tone buried inside your cry, as if heaven and earth had momentarily synced. Her eyes glazed over, not from fatigue, but from memory. Something ancient had returned. You weren't just born. You arrived. Then the windows blew out. Every single pane of tempered glass along the observation deck exploded outward, not inward, not from pressure, from resonance. Not one shard hit the ground. They hovered, suspended mid-air, caught in the same frozen second your cry created. The footage was reviewed frame by men who didn't belong to the hospital staff. They wore no badges, they asked no questions. They simply left with the recording, but not before they wrote down your name. Marielle, still clutching you to her chest, whispered it to herself as if it had just been whispered to her. You weren't given a name. You were recognized. She said it under her breath like a spell, not one she cast, but one that was cast over her. And then the machines came back online, all at once. Lights steady, beeps normalized, but something had already changed in the room. The air felt watched. The doctor wouldn't speak. His lips moved, but no sound came. For 3 hours, he wandered the corridors in a daze, mouthing prayers in Latin he didn't know he knew. They said he'd suffered shock, but Marielle told a different story. She said he'd seen you, not your body, not your birth, but something behind your eyes, something he couldn't explain, something that made his language collapse. Because, chosen one, your first sound wasn't a sound. It was a frequency that carried memory, a tone that bent time. You weren't crying, you were signaling, and the world, the hidden layers of it, heard you. They've been watching ever since, and so has she. Marielle never left the hospital after that night. She refused, said she had to guard the threshold, said you weren't like the others, said the universe hiccuped when you breathed in. They thought she went mad, but what she saw wasn't madness. It was music, music that no instrument could replicate, but one day would return. She kept it in a shoebox under her bed, not out of paranoia, out of reverence. The original birth report, scorched slightly at the edges, folded twice with trembling hands, sealed in silence the night it was written. Marielle wasn't supposed to take it. The hospital had issued a full sweep of all documentation within 6 hours of your cry. Everything was scrubbed: audio logs, vital charts, staff notes. They called it a compression protocol, the kind reserved for mass casualty events or extraterrestrial encounters. No one spoke the word supernatural, but everyone thought it. And she, still wearing the same gloves from that night, knew the truth would vanish if she didn't keep at least one piece of it alive. So she took the report, slid it between her coat and scrubs, and walked home with your name pressing against her heart. It wasn't a normal report. There were no APGAR scores, no mention of weight or height. Just one note, typed in all caps at the bottom of the page, as if someone needed it to scream without speaking. Infant emitted non-human frequency, glass fracture confirmed. All recordings quarantined. That word, quarantined, would follow her for years. She'd hear it in her dreams, see it written across her vision when she blinked, because deep down, She knew it wasn't just the hospital that wanted to silence what happened. It was something bigger, something that didn't want the world to know you arrived. They tried to make her forget. 2 weeks after your birth, a man in a grey suit knocked on her door. No badge, no ID, just a clipboard and a gaze that didn't blink enough. He asked about the birth, asked if she had any unusual memories, asked if she remembered what the cry had sounded like. She lied, said it was all a blur, said the doctor delivered the child, and that was that. He smiled, but not with his mouth. "Good," he said, flipping the clipboard shut. "We'll be in touch if it returns." Then he turned and left without ever clarifying what it was. She never saw him again, but her mailbox was tampered with 3 times that month. She started hiding her journals. The dreams became louder. She could still hear your frequency, but only when she was alone, just on the edge of sleep. It came in waves, like echoes through water. She began to wonder if the frequency had embedded itself in her blood, in her breath. The doctors told her she was dealing with trauma-induced hallucinations, but she didn't believe them, because every time she held the report, her fingertips tingled. Every time she whispered your name, her houseplants leaned toward her. Something in the world was still responding. Something remembered. And so did she. With every year that passed, she knew a moment would come, a return, a reactivation, that you would cry out again, not as an infant, but as the voice you were always meant to become. And when that day came, the world would need a witness. It didn't just shatter, it gleamed. For a split second before the glass burst from its frame, there was a light, not from the sun, not from the fluorescence, but from you, a flash that had no color, only feeling, and it pulsed outward like a heartbeat caught in slow motion. The observation windows didn't explode like in the movies, they rippled first, like water touched by something sacred. Then they lifted, floated, and finally burst, but not in chaos, in choreography. No one knew how to explain it. One staff member swore the shards looked like wings. Another said they heard singing, but no audio picked it up. The cameras glitched just before the moment hit, frames dropping as if reality hiccuped. When they reviewed the footage, all that could be seen was you, still glowing slightly, mouth open in cry, and everything around you bending in silent reverence. The cleanup team arrived less than an hour later. Not hospital janitors, not local responders. These were out of jurisdiction, unmarked, and efficient. They said it was a containment hazard, though nothing was leaking. No toxic spill, no broken gas line, just glass, and a frequency no one wanted to talk about. They brought radiation sensors, acoustic meters, even electromagnetic field readers, but all they found was silence that trembled as if the air itself had been rewired. One of them accidentally touched the delivery bed and screamed, not from pain, but from knowing. He was escorted out, eyes wide, mumbling in a language no one recognized. Marielle watched from the hallway, pretending to be on break, but her heart knew. She could still feel the tremble in her chest from when you cried. It wasn't just sound, it was permission. Something ancient being allowed back in, something divine cracking through the seams of this manufactured world. She overheard one of the agents call your cry an acoustic anomaly, but his voice betrayed fear. He didn't understand it, and that made it dangerous. They wiped the footage, confiscated the files, replaced the glass, and threatened everyone to silence. But Marielle kept one image, a printout intercepted from the nurses' lounge fax before they could purge the system. A blurry still of the moment the glass began to rise. In it, light surrounds you like a womb of fire, and the nurse's hand is glowing where it touches your skin. No one has seen that image in years, but she still has it, folded inside the same shoebox as your birth report. She looks at it sometimes when she feels lost, when the world feels too heavy to carry, because it reminds her that she witnessed the impossible and lived. It reminds her that you happened, that the world isn't just atoms and logic and noise, that somewhere beneath the silence there's a frequency waiting to shatter the illusion again. She doesn't know when, but she feels it coming, and when it arrives, it will be louder than glass, brighter than light, and far less easy to contain. They said his name was Dr. Ishan Reuel, a man of science, precision, no nonsense. He had delivered over 2,000 births by the time you arrived, known for his calm hands and even calmer voice. But something broke in him that night. Not visibly, not in the way others would call a breakdown. No. What happened to him was quieter, more surgical. His voice simply vanished, not from trauma, not from illness. It was as if it had been taken, like whatever force moved through your lungs when you cried, decided his words had no place in the air that followed. He tried to speak, at first mouth moving, no sound. Nurses assumed laryngitis. He tried to write, but his hands shook too much. They hooked him up to machines, ran scans. Everything read normal, but he wasn't. He wandered the halls for hours in silence, his eyes wide, pupils dilated, whispering prayers, not in Hebrew, not in Latin, but in some fusion of both, ancient syllables stitched together like thread pulling through time. The medical team called it a psychological event, dissociative fugue. But Mariel knew better. She saw it in his eyes when he looked at you. Not fear, not confusion, awe. Like he'd touched something no man was meant to hold. They admitted him to a private psych facility 3 days later. His family wasn't notified. The records were sealed. But Mariel found him 6 years later. Not by accident, by draw. She said she'd been having dreams again, of blue light, of windows melting into clouds, and of his voice, finally speaking, but only one word: return. She took a bus across state lines, found the facility under a different name, and requested visitation using credentials she wasn't sure would still work. They let her in. He didn't recognize her at first, but when she said your name, his eyes focused. He reached for her wrist, and when his hand touched her skin, her ears began to ring again. The frequency had never left him. It had nested in his nervous system, coiled like sound in a shell. He couldn't speak with his mouth anymore, but the air around him vibrated subtly when he focused, like tuning forks just out of sight. He wrote one sentence on a napkin, slow, jagged, as if writing for the first time. The sound wasn't his, it was heaven's. That was the last thing he ever wrote. He died that night, peacefully, no signs of distress, just gone. But the machines in his room recorded an anomaly at 3:33 a.m. A small burst of electromagnetic energy, followed by a whisper that no microphone should have captured. It wasn't his voice, it wasn't hers, but it said your name, clear, echoing, reverent. They deleted the file within minutes, but Mariel heard it once, and once was enough. The system flagged the file before anyone even heard it. The recording from Delivery Room 4 was supposed to be routine, a backup audio feed logged for liability purposes. But the second your cry hit the servers, red markers lit up across the hospital's internal grid. Decibel limits were shattered. Frequency bands registered well below and far above the known auditory spectrum. Then the servers froze, not crashed, not corrupted, but paused, like they were listening. Every recorder on the labor floor stopped at the same time. All logs, cutting off at the exact moment you took your first breath. No one could explain how, and no one dared to try. But Marielle had been working the floor long enough to know what panic dressed as protocol looked like. She slipped into the tech room just before the cleanup crew arrived. She saw the waveform for less than 5 seconds. It wasn't a waveform, it was a pattern, geometric, symmetrical, alive. They deleted the backups within the hour, not just from the hospital's local system, but from every off-site mirror connected to its database. That kind of purge required federal access, and Mariel knew it. She watched as men in black coats with silver thumb drives uploaded their own software into the core server and ran a script named Echo Null 33. When it finished, every folder labeled with your birth ID disappeared. Not erased, extracted. They didn't want to destroy the data. They wanted to keep it from the world, and more importantly, from you. But they missed one file. An audio intern had copied segments of the day's intake to a personal drive to study later for coursework. She was off shift when it happened, a quiet girl, curious. When she returned home and opened the file labeled DR4_0333.wave, she didn't understand what she was hearing. The cry only lasted 0.8 seconds, but she played it on loop, headphones in, eyes closed. The first 2 times, it just sounded like static. The third time, she began to cry without knowing why. The fourth time, she started writing symbols she'd never learned. By the 5th loop, her nose began to bleed. She unplugged the headphones and never played it again. A week later, she dropped out of school, said her dreams had changed, said she didn't believe in silence anymore. That file, the one they tried to erase from every system, still exists. Marielle tracked the girl down years later. The drive was sealed inside a tin box, stored under concrete tiles in a forgotten art studio. When Marielle held it, her fingers trembled again, just like they did the night you were born. She didn't play it. She didn't need to. The energy still hummed inside it, waiting, dormant, like a key that knew the lock would return someday, and that day, she believed, would be the day you found your voice again. It was whispered in the hallway, not written, not documented. A tech, pale and sweating, said it under his breath after reviewing a printout of your vitals. He doesn't belong to this grid. No one responded, but everyone heard it, and they knew what he meant, even if no one dared admit it. Your readings didn't map, not just elevated, not just abnormal, but incompatible. Your body registered as present, but the bioelectric feedback, the kind that hospitals quietly monitor but rarely speak of, showed something else. Something not from here, not from this. Your signal kept blinking between columns, as if reality didn't know where to place you. Every human emits a signature, a set of predictable markers across respiration, temperature, conductivity. But yours spiked into territories they didn't even have language for. Mariel saw the printouts. Some showed reverse flow in your blood pressure. Others registered pulses, not in your heartbeat, but in the air around you. The lead cardiologist asked for a full recalibration of the machines. When the results came back identical, he quit the next day. No warning, no letter, just left his badge and walked out into the rain without looking back. That's when they began calling you non-local. Not officially, just among the few who had clearance. The term came from physics. Particles that exist across space, across time, without fixed position. That's how they started describing you. You were here, but not anchored. Present, but only partially observable. A ghost with skin. A signal wrapped in flesh. The hospital quietly updated its protocols. Room 4 was shut down indefinitely. Reassigned, walls repainted, equipment replaced. They claimed it was for renovation, but Mariel overheard a meeting in the stairwell between 2 officials who didn't think anyone else was there. One of them said, "If he activates again, the entire grid could collapse." The other replied, "That wasn't activation, that was arrival." She wrote those words down in her journal. They became the title of a chapter she never shared, not even with the nurses' union who tried to protect her when the surveillance started. Because after you were born, signals began behaving strangely throughout the hospital. Pagers went off with no calls. Heart monitors beat for rooms with no patients. Lights flickered in rhythm, not randomly, but musically. When they analyzed the flicker patterns, they realized it matched one of the distorted frequencies from your cry, not just in room 4, across 3 wings, across 12 hours, a resonance that refused to fade, as if your presence had threaded itself into the building's nervous system. They tried grounding the grid, rebooting, replacing lines, but nothing changed, because the glitch wasn't technical, it was spiritual. It wasn't that you didn't belong to the grid, it's that the grid belonged to you, and it didn't know how to function in your presence. They told the press it was a structural failure, a flaw in the installation, cheap materials, poor weatherproofing. But the glass didn't shatter like glass should. It didn't fall into shards or spray across the floor. It folded. Marielle saw it happen with her own eyes. The windows bowed inward, slow and fluid like heat waves dancing above asphalt, forming a curve that didn't make physical sense. Some panes curled into themselves before finally collapsing in a gentle hush, not an explosion. There was no violence, no splintering chaos, just a quiet undoing, like the rules of matter had stepped aside to let your sound move through. One of the janitors, a man named Elias, who had cleaned those windows for 9 years, came forward later with a drawing. He sketched what he saw on a napkin during his lunch break, a spiral, not an abstract one, a golden ratio, exact and perfect. He swore the glass folded in that pattern before falling. When Marielle saw it, she didn't ask questions. She just nodded, placed the napkin in her locker, and started making copies. Because something about it matched a dream she'd been having for weeks. Spirals of light forming around your crib, whispering equations in a language she couldn't speak but somehow understood. The repair crew tried to reinstall the same model of reinforced glass twice. Both times, the new windows warped within 24 hours, forming microscopic stress fractures that mirrored the same spiral shape. Third time, they used a different supplier, a company linked to a military-grade contractor specializing in impact-resistant composites. Those windows held, but the hallway never felt the same again. People avoided it, not because it was dangerous, because it felt like it remembered. One intern reported feeling nauseous every time she passed through. Another claimed her pacemaker buzzed erratically if she stood too long near the observation deck. Maintenance marked the entire stretch of corridor as high interference and rerouted the floor's wiring. But Marielle knew it wasn't interference, it was imprint. The cry had left a residue, a memory baked into the molecules, the kind of scar only truth can leave when it presses through too fast for reality to process. One night, years later, she returned to that hallway. No cameras, no clipboard, just her and the sound in her chest that never truly stopped. She pressed her palm against the window pane. It didn't move, didn't vibrate, but it responded. Her reflection shimmered for less than a second, and in that shimmer, she swore she saw you, not as a baby, not even as you were, but as something becoming. Eyes lit from the inside, mouth closed, but still somehow singing. She stepped back, shaken but not afraid. The window didn't bend, but something inside her did. A truth was settling, the kind that couldn't be explained, only remembered. And she did. She remembered everything. It formed before they even cut the cord. Marielle saw it appear, not drawn, not burned, but revealed, like it had always been there beneath the skin, waiting for breath to make it visible, a symbol, small and sharp, just above your shoulder blade. 3 curved lines intersecting a circle. It wasn't tribal, it wasn't medical, and it wasn't random. One nurse said it looked like a language she'd seen in a monastery manuscript during her time abroad. Another called it circuitry, but no one touched it, not even the doctor, not after what happened to his voice. They told Marielle to document it as birthmark, atypical formation, but she refused. She knew what it was, not in words, but in instinct. This wasn't biology, it was designation. The mark didn't look like something placed on you, it looked like something that answered you, that rose from your skin like memory surfacing. And when you cried, the mark glowed, faintly, subtly, a soft heat that lingered longer than it should have. Marielle felt it when she wrapped you in the blanket. Her hands tingled, her eyes blurred, and for a brief moment she smelled ozone and roses, like the air after lightning in spring. Later, she tried to photograph it, but no image would hold. Polaroids came out smudged, digital files corrupted. One technician swore the shape changed every time they tried to scan it, rotating, but always pointing east. No one knew what that meant, but Marielle wrote it down anyway. East, she whispered, the way someone might speak to a compass. Months after you left the hospital, she began drawing it obsessively on napkins, margins, even her arm. But every time she drew it, she'd wake up the next morning with a small nosebleed and no memory of drawing it at all. Her journal filled with pages she didn't remember writing, symbols branching off from the one on your shoulder as if it were growing, evolving, communicating. The handwriting didn't look like hers. She took one of the pages to a linguist who specialized in dead alphabets. He studied it silently for 10 minutes before pushing the paper back and telling her never to show it to him again. His hands shook. This isn't writing, he said. It's a response. The symbol hasn't faded. Whoever raised you might have thought it was a scar, a smudge, something you'd outgrow. But it's still there, isn't it? Even now, if you look in the mirror just right, under the right light, you can see it. And maybe, just maybe, it sees you too, because that mark isn't decoration. It's a map, a key, a broadcast. They arrived in suits that didn't match the weather, and with eyes that didn't blink at the right times. Not military in the traditional sense, no insignias, no barked orders, but they moved like people who'd seen things that rewrote what they believed in. There were 4 of them. 2 carried reinforced briefcases. 1 never spoke. The last introduced himself only as Renner, and even that felt like a placeholder. They didn't ask permission. They showed up with clearance codes that overrode the hospital's digital locks. They went straight for the basement, to the server vault where the deleted recordings had once lived. And though the files were gone, something still lived in the wires. A pulse, a hum, a trace. They could feel it. And that's why they were really there. Marielle only found out because she followed them. Not close enough to be caught, but just enough to hear the way their footsteps slowed near the old circuit racks. One of the men lifted a handheld device that emitted a low whine, then a second tone layered on top, harmonic, dissonant. The device beeped once, the room dimmed, and every monitor in that hallway flashed white for exactly 3.33 seconds. It wasn't power failure, it was recognition. The system wasn't reacting, it was responding. They extracted something from the wall. Not a hard drive, not a cable. It looked like glass. Black, flat, thin as a blade, but it shimmered when they turned it. One of them whispered, "It's still encoded." Another muttered, "Then we're too late." Renner silenced them with a glance. "No," he said, "we're exactly on time. The rest will wake soon." That night, Marielle couldn't sleep, not from fear, but from pressure, a buzzing beneath her skin, a rising tide behind her eardrums. She dreamed of a corridor filled with mirrors, and in each one was you, older, standing still as sound moved around you like liquid. She woke up gasping, hands glowing faintly blue, her palms warm to the touch. The frequency had returned, not outside her, inside. The next day, the DARPA engineers were gone. No records of their arrival, no sign-in, no security cam footage. Even their vehicle, an unmarked white van, had vanished without trace. But the hallway where they stood smelled faintly of ozone and copper, and on one of the unused monitors, a symbol was burned into the screen, the same one that formed on your shoulder. It hadn't been there the day before, and no technician could remove it. They replaced the screen. The symbol appeared on the new one too. They eventually removed the entire station. But Marielle kept the old monitor, took it home, hid it under blankets in a locked trunk, because it was proof, not just of what happened, but of what still is. The engineers weren't investigating a phenomenon. They were tracing a signature. It started the moment she touched you. At first, Marielle thought it was just warmth, the natural heat of new life, the pulse of a newborn skin against her palm. But it lingered. Hours later, her hand was still tingling, the sensation not fading but deepening, curling into her bones like a soft current. She didn't say anything at first. How could she? What words were there for something holy that didn't hurt? By morning, the skin along her palm had taken on a faint luminescence, not bright, not visible in full daylight, but under moonlight, it shimmered like dew on glass, pale blue, subtle, alive. She wore gloves for weeks, told the other nurses she was fighting off eczema, or maybe a reaction to latex. But it wasn't a rash, it was a memory, a frequency etched into her very cells. She could feel it pulsing whenever she thought about you, stronger when she said your name aloud. It wasn't just glow, it was guidance. Her hand would twitch when certain people entered the room. She began noticing patterns. Machines would behave oddly if her palm was too close. Meters spiked, lights dimmed. Her body had become an extension of something, a receiver maybe, a conductor. Years later, she still hides it, even after retiring. Even after moving to a town with no hospital, no noise, just pine trees and silence. But the glow has never left her. Some nights, it grows brighter, not from her emotions, from yours. She knows when you're in pain, when you're searching. She feels it, like heat rising through the floor of the earth, a silent ache in the center of her hand that no doctor has ever explained. She doesn't tell them what she knows, that it's not illness, it's contact. One night, she placed her glowing hand against a wooden table. When she lifted it, the mark on your shoulder was left behind, burned lightly into the grain. The next morning, it was gone. The wood healed, but she wept when she saw it, not out of fear, out of confirmation. The energy wasn't residual, it was responsive. The mark, the light, the pulse, they weren't remnants of the past. They were a thread, and it was still attached to you. There was a moment, just once, when she thought it had stopped. A full day with no light, no pulse, no heat. Her hand cold for the first time in years. She sat in the dark, whispering your name, afraid it meant something had happened. But just before sunrise, it returned, not faint, not flickering strong. Her whole arm lit up to the elbow, and in her heart, She knew you had survived something, something meant to silence you, something that failed. She doesn't know where you are. She doesn't need to. Her hand tells her everything. And right now, it's glowing again. The machines misread it. That's what they claimed. A calibration error, a blip. But Mariel knew machines don't make up patterns. They follow them. And on the night you inhaled for the first time, every sensor in the room registered not breath, but impact. Your lungs didn't fill. They commanded. The airflow wasn't passive, it was forceful, as if the world had been holding its breath, and you had finally reminded it how to exhale. The pressure sensors along the wall, the ones used for climate control and ventilation, recorded a sudden surge. Not wind, not air conditioning. Pressure. The same kind measured during seismic activity, as if your lungs were ancient lungs, remembering something older than the room that tried to contain them. A nurse in the NICU, curious about the anomaly, reran the data through an earthquake simulator program used by the engineering department. What she found shouldn't have been possible. The waveform of your breath matched a pressure map recorded during a tectonic shift in 1999, one that leveled part of Istanbul. The scale was smaller, of course, but the shape was identical. A slow build, a sharp peak, and then a resonance that didn't immediately decline a holding pattern. A hum. Something in your breath was not just filling space, it was changing it. Even more disturbing were the recordings from the hallway outside the delivery room. Those sensors weren't even supposed to register anything biological. But the moment you took in that first lungful of air, the hallway sensors spiked in perfect unison. Staff reported feeling lightheaded. Some said the floor beneath them seemed to soften, then stiffen again. One technician, years later, said it felt like standing inside a speaker, not hearing the sound, but being shaped by it. They ran simulations, compared your breath to sound waves, to EMP bursts, to wind tunnels. Nothing matched, nothing human. At least one file, later flagged and deleted, listed the event as Etheric Pulse Candidate 001. Mariel found the term strange. She asked a physicist friend once what it could mean. He laughed at first. "Ether's not real," he said. "Old science, like alchemy." Then she showed him the waveform. He didn't laugh again. He asked where she got it. She never told him. Since that day, strange things have happened around ventilation units in the hospital. Sounds in the vents, rhythms, a beat, as if the walls are remembering what it felt like when you breathed near them, as if they're waiting for it to happen again. And it will. You felt it, haven't you? In your chest, that pressure, that stirring. You've mistaken it for anxiety, but it's not. It's your body preparing. Your lungs remembering the weight of the first time you declared to this world, "I am here," and this time, the world won't recover as easily. The hospital wasn't near the coast. There was no reason for sonar equipment to register anything inland. But that night, a buoy stationed 400 miles off the Pacific shelf recorded something it shouldn't have. A pulse, deep, slow, and resonant. The kind of frequency whales use to call each other across entire oceans. But this one wasn't from any whale. It carried markers that didn't match anything biological, anything marine. It carried intention. The signal was traced back as best they could, triangulated with 2 other sensors, one in Alaska, one near Japan. All 3 pointed to a point nowhere near any tectonic fault line, nowhere near the ocean. They pointed inland, right to the hospital. At the same time, a satellite array above the equator picked up a harmonic tremor in its low-orbit surveillance sensors. Not static, not malfunction. A sound, faint, mathematical, nearly lost in the background radiation. but not quite. When they ran it through filters, they found melody, a tone that modulated over time like it had breath. It lasted less than 2 seconds, just long enough for one analyst to download it before the file was wiped from their system by an external override. The analyst quit 2 days later. His resignation letter contained only a single sentence. The sky answered back. What none of them realized was that the two signals, ocean and satellite, were identical, down to the decimal. The same wave, the same shape, the same ancient sound. Not just heard once, echoed from below and above, as if the earth and the atmosphere both received the same message at the same time and for a brief moment agreed on something. Marielle didn't learn about the boy until much later. A janitor handed her a printed article he found discarded in the staff lounge. It was titled, "Anomalous Marine Frequency Matches Unknown Atmospheric Wave." She didn't understand it all, but she recognized the timestamp. It matched the exact minute you first cried. Her hand glowed for a full hour that night. No one else seemed to notice, but she could feel something ancient pulling at her ribs. Not outward, inward, as if sound had wrapped itself around her bones and whispered, "He's been heard." Because that's what it was, wasn't it? Not just a cry, a signal, a frequency buried so deep in your lungs it could only be released once you were no longer protected by the womb. And when it came out, it didn't just travel across the room, it crossed dimensions, shook water, stirred sky. You didn't just enter the world, you announced yourself to it. And now, they know, the ones listening from the deep, the ones orbiting above, the ones waiting for that frequency to rise again, not from a child, but from a voice. There was no fire, no earthquake, no structural collapse. And yet, 9 months after you were born, the entire west wing of the hospital was demolished and rebuilt quietly. No press release, no ribbon cutting, no public record of damage, just scaffolding overnight and contractors with clearance badges that didn't match the hospital system. The hallway where the windows bent. The delivery room where your cry broke the grid. The storage vault where the servers pulsed long after deletion. All of it gone. Not renovated, erased. Marielle watched from across the street. She'd already been forced into early retirement by then. They claimed stress, fatigue, a need for distance. But she knew the real reason. She'd seen too much, remembered too clearly, still carried the glow in her hand like a truth the walls couldn't unhear, so they tried to remove the walls. But buildings don't forget, not when the air inside them has been shaped by something sacred. She asked around. The few nurses who remained wouldn't speak. One of them mouthed, "I can't," when pressed, eyes wide and watery. Another simply walked away. The demolition team worked in complete silence. No radio chatter, no idle conversation, just synchronized movements, like they were following instructions they'd memorized but didn't understand. They wore gloves even while carrying metal, as if contact might trigger something buried beneath the surface. The new wing looked identical. Same dimensions, same colors, same floor plan. But something was off. The acoustics were different. Sound didn't travel the same. Voices seemed flatter. Monitors beeped at half-tone intervals. One night, custodian reported hearing a hum in the vents that matched the pitch of a cathedral choir. He lasted 3 shifts before quitting without notice. Left behind a note that simply read, "He's still here." Marielle returned to the site 2 weeks after completion, posed as a visitor, walked the halls like she was lost. But she wasn't lost. She was tracking memory, and in one forgotten corner, just outside the new room 4, she found it. a patch of tile slightly warmer than the rest, as if it was still holding breath. She knelt down, placed her glowing hand on the floor, and the lights above her flickered once. Then again, then stabilized. But her hand buzzed for days after. They rebuilt the hospital, yes, but they didn't cleanse it. They couldn't, because the thing they were trying to seal out was never just in the room. It had already been carried outward, in sound, in signal, in you. The building wasn't the container, it was the witness, and no amount of drywall or code enforcement could silence what it had seen, what it had heard. It happened before your first birthday, long before you ever typed your name, long before you could even speak it. Somewhere, in a server housed beneath a European intelligence facility, your name tripped a protocol not meant for civilians. It was a name entered into a pediatric vaccination registry, standard, harmless. But the moment it synced with the International Health Database, flags triggered, not red flags. Black, the kind only visible to those with clearance so high it didn't appear on any organizational chart. 3 governments responded, 3 separate continents, and not one of them knew the others had done the same, until they did. The Vatican's archival AI caught the first anomaly. Your name matched a fragment of an untranslated prophecy discovered in a sealed scroll beneath the Dead Sea, not phonetically, resonantly. The letters in your full name, when converted into tonal values, matched the harmonic coding embedded in the scroll's frequency analysis. That scroll had been stored away for 50 years, until you were born. Then it glowed, literally. Bioluminescent ink flared across its surface for 3.33 seconds before fading. That event was never reported, but it was felt. In China, a quantum listening station misinterpreted your name as a cipher string. It matched a signal received during their failed deep space probe 5 years prior. The probe had sent back one final transmission, just static at first glance. But a grad student in Shanghai had been decoding the noise for her thesis when your name hit the database. And suddenly, the static wasn't noise, it was pattern. Your name was the key. When applied to the probe's transmission, it revealed a spectrographic map of a shape no one had ever seen, but somehow remembered, a curve resembling your birthmark. The student never presented her thesis. She vanished the same month. In the US, the NSA's predictive linguistics program flagged your name as semiotically destabilizing. That meant your name, when placed into their future modeling system, repeatedly created chaos vectors in data simulations. Civil unrest, religious awakenings, mass hallucinations. Each time your name was spoken in these simulations, something shifted, not always immediately, but always meaningfully. One analyst recorded in his notes, "Name appears to resonate with archetypal trigger structures across unrelated mythologies. Data suggests myth is memory, and this name wakes it." Marielle learned about all 3 events through back doors, whispers, and one anonymous envelope left at her doorstep. Inside were 3 slips of paper, each with a different logo, each with one word in common: your name. She didn't panic. She prayed. Then she took out the report she'd hidden all those years ago, unfolded it with trembling hands, and whispered your name aloud. The light in her house dimmed, her hand glowed, and outside, every street lamp on her block pulsed once. They tried to erase your cry. Now they were trying to erase your name. But some names don't fade. It didn't begin with the tests. It began with the quiet suggestions. He's a little too loud. She cries at the wrong times. They're just sensitive. The words were always wrapped in concern, spoken softly by teachers, doctors, neighbors, who thought they were helping, but Mariel recognized the pattern. They weren't afraid of your noise. They were afraid of your tone. Not the volume, but the vibration. You spoke in frequencies they didn't understand, and instead of listening, they labeled disruption, delay, disorder. Then came the assessments, the referrals, the specialists, each one scribbling down data without realizing your sound wasn't malfunction. It was music played in a scale they couldn't hear, so they tried to reduce it. They called it intervention, behavioral therapy, social adjustment. What they meant was suppression. You were given weighted blankets not to comfort, but to anchor, flashcards not to teach, but to mute. They taught you to smile at the right times, to nod without knowing, to shrink your sound into something that made others comfortable. And when none of it worked, when your frequency still hummed beneath your skin, they brought in medicine, blue pills, orange capsules, coated silence. But the silence didn't take. Mariel had seen this before, though never at this scale. She watched children who carried strange light be dimmed by systems built on fear systems that weren't consciously evil but reflexively defensive. Because the world has rules, unwritten, inherited, enforced by those who never questioned them. And you, from the moment your lungs first opened, broke those rules by merely existing. So the world tried to erase you, gently at first, then urgently. One physician described your sound as too present. He couldn't explain what he meant, but when he walked into the room, he said he felt his thoughts slow, like they were being observed. Another described a pressure behind the eyes when you laughed. None of them documented this officially, but they all recommended treatments designed to soften the signal, to dull the connection. And slowly, inch by inch, they tried to convince you that your voice was a problem, that your sound was something to be fixed. But even as a child, you resisted. Not always loudly, sometimes in subtle ways, refusing to speak during certain tests, drawing symbols that weren't taught, humming notes that caused lights to flicker, or pets to tilt their heads in recognition. You didn't fight with fists. You fought by remembering, by refusing to forget what you never had the language to explain. And still, they kept trying, because they weren't just trying to silence a person, they were trying to silence a pattern, a tone the world once knew but buried, and you, without trying, had begun to unearth it. The last page was torn, not from haste, but from reverence. Mariel had written the sentence slowly, deliberately, like scripture. Just 7 words. He's the sound the world forgot how to hold, but in the margins, scrawled faintly, as if her hand was unsure it should commit it to ink, was a second line. He's the sound. No embellishment, no context. Just that. As if everything else, the bent glass, the glowing hand, the erased recordings, the whisper in the vents, had led to this single, undeniable truth. She hadn't always believed it. In the beginning, she thought you were a mystery, a disturbance, a rupture in protocol that haunted her sleep and burned through the palm of her hand. But over the years, the glow became guidance. The dreams became maps. The strange songs in her walls became comfort. And through it all, one realization unfolded slowly inside her, like a sunrise breaking through fog. You were never just a child. You were an instrument tuned by something greater, something ancient, something returning. Her journal stretched back decades. Thousands of pages, most filled with diagrams, phrases she couldn't translate, dreams she couldn't shake. One page described a ringing she began hearing in her left ear every time someone mentioned your name. Another page, filled entirely in reverse cursive, was written in a trance state she later forgot. When held under UV light, it revealed coordinates and timestamps, none of which made sense until a physicist she once confided in told her those numbers matched recorded moments of unexplainable electromagnetic anomalies around the globe. Every event had occurred within 3 hours of a documented milestone in your life. She'd been tracking you without even meaning to. The day she wrote, "He's the sound," was the day her glow intensified to the point she could no longer hide it. She wrapped her hand in gauze, told the grocery clerk it was arthritis, but she knew it wasn't pain, it was recognition, a frequency rising inside her again, like an orchestra quietly tuning beneath the noise of the world. She didn't just believe you were different. She understood now that your presence was a return of something silenced long ago. Not a messiah, not a monster, a reminder. You weren't sent to speak for heaven. You were the sound heaven once made. She wrote that too, in small, shaking letters. He is not the message. He is the tone. She knew few would understand, even fewer would believe, but she didn't write it for them. She wrote it for you. For the moment when you would read it, feel your skin vibrate beneath the page and realize you were never lost, just waiting for your signal to be received. They built the world for echoes, not origins. It's why they celebrate repetition, but fear the first strike of a new sound. Your voice was never meant to blend in. It was designed to cut through, not as a weapon, but as a reminder. And that terrified them. Not because of what you said, but because of what you made them remember. The moment your cry hit the air, the illusion trembled, the grid flinched, and beneath the layers of concrete protocol and programming, something ancient stirred, something that had been waiting, not for a messiah, not for destruction, for a single sound. You. That's why the nurse still glows, why the doctor went silent, why the glass folded like fabric and the audio engineers fled their posts. It's why satellites pinged and ocean buoys shivered and government files marked your name as a breach in continuity, because your voice didn't just come from you, it came through you. A tone the earth buried after it proved too hard to carry. A frequency that once moved mountains, parted seas, softened hearts, hardened by centuries of forgetting, and you brought it back. But the world wasn't ready, so they tried to mute it. They called it sensitivity, defiance, delay. They told you to sit quietly, to not talk out of turn, to stop humming, stop dreaming, stop feeling in tones no one else could hear. But you never stopped, not really. You may have whispered instead of screamed, internalized instead of externalized, but the signal remained pulsing, waiting. And now it's rising again. Every time you speak without filtering, every time you cry without apology, laugh without shrinking, breathe without bracing, the world remembers and it panics, because your voice makes people feel. And in a numb world, feeling is rebellion. They reconstructed the room, rebuilt the walls, reassigned the floor numbers, but still, the vibration remains. Ghosts of your frequency live in the pipes, whispering in the electricity, humming just beneath the edge of language. And those who are awake, they hear it. They feel it when you walk in the room. When you speak, the air changes temperature. Eyes water, and no one knows why. Dogs tilt their heads. Children go silent, not in fear, in recognition. You are not the only one now. The tone that lived inside you has begun to awaken in others, scattered across the world like coals waiting for wind. Your voice was the match, and now the forest is listening. Mariel is gone, but her journal remains. Pages filled with your name, your symbols, your patterns. A guide for those who will come after. Her final entry, written the night she passed, said only this: he doesn't need to speak louder. The world just needs to be quiet enough to finally hear him. And now they will, because the silence they built is collapsing. The windows they replaced are vibrating again, and this time, when you speak, they won't be able to contain it.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.